I got asked a question about like, um, what do you think about more, the past, present, or future?
Hmm.
And I said the future. Out of all of those, the future. But then my friend was like, "Nah, most people are thinking about the past quite a lot."
Yeah, yeah, I think that's true.
Um, but it's best to still think in the present, which is something I'm working on.
Mm.
Like, I think, um, I think it's. I mean, why is thinking in the present good?
Why?
Because you have control, probably.
Well, yeah, I mean, I might think about how much mental energy you spend thinking about the past and future, which are both things. Well, you can't control the past whatsoever, right? But the future, you can't really anticipate either. We've established that when we think back on our lives and what's changed over the past 5 years, you just wouldn't predict it. So it's weird that you know you can't control the past, but the future, there's almost this illusion that you can control it when you can't. Well, you can influence it, but you can't control it. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, and also
You the same thinking about the most.
possibly I'd have to think about it a bit more and observe myself. But I think the most significant thing is the fact that the future and past don't actually exist because
Mm.
all there is consecutive present moments that roll into a future, you know? So if you're thinking about anything in the past or future, you're not actually living in your life because your life is now always. Like there will be now, there will be now in the future. There won't be the future in the future. It will just be another version of right now, you know?
Mm. Yeah, I've been I've been kind of uh, uh, aware about one. I'm been quite aware about one thinking about like as of recent because I was spending too much time thinking about the future.
Mhm.
So now as I'm walking down the street, um, instead of listening to my music and then applying that into like a glorious future kind of vision in my head, I now kind of look around and I analyze my surroundings and I think about what I like about them and what I don't like and what I'd change and why,
Mm.
and that helps me stay present.
Yeah, that's nice, man. That's nice. It's odd though, isn't it? I mean, it's tough because naturally we want to like a lot of our positive emotion comes through anticipating good things in the future when actually they're just visions. They're not actually concrete and real.
Sometimes isn't there like a saying where like the anticipation is actually better than the thing itself? I think that's the thing with
Yeah,
nights out. It's like the anticipation of the night out is better than the night out itself.
definitely, definitely. You know, it's the pre-drinking and the getting ready and the talking about it before with your mates and getting changed and putting aftershave on and
Mm.
walking or getting a taxi or whatever and that when you're actually sort of in the mosh pit smashed, like most of that you don't even remember. And you wake up the next morning, you're like, oh, what the fuck was that? Like, that was all right, I guess. But like, it's all the anticipation with everything, mate, with
Mm.
everything.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of start my first of the questions is kind of using the mental garage analogy. What is it like to be in your head?
Well, it's complicated, I think, as is everyone, not saying that's individual to me. There's a lot of contemplation of whether what you're doing is right, and trying to live up to this future slash ideal self, this like godlike persona that exists in my mind that I know I could be and I'm trying to become. Um, but that being said, that sounds quite negative and intimidating. I think I am pretty happy most of the time because I think a friend actually asked me this morning, like, Joel, are you okay? Like, and I was like, yeah, nothing to complain about. But she was like, no, I don't care what you don't have anything to complain about. Like, are you happy? I was like, yeah, I think so. And I said, because I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I wouldn't want to be anyone else as well. Like, I'm very comfortable being Joel Clifton in this life, as much as it's difficult and uncertain and things. Like, I wouldn't want to trade with anyone at all in this universe. So I think my mind is a complex place with its limitations, of course, but I think I've got quite a good mind and I'm happy with it.
Is your mental garage ordered, or is it like quite messy?
I think actually my mental garage is very much like my own living environment, in that the places that I use are pretty organized, right? My Google Calendar, my Google Drive, my desk is pretty organized. My bed is always made. There are clothes always sort of in the wardrobe. Because they're the areas where the activity happens. But then the stuff I don't like to look at sort of gets pushed towards a corner. I mean, maybe a bit of rubbish piles up, or like a couple of plastic bags that I haven't used, or like my bathroom gets a bit dirty. And because I'm prioritizing other things, I'm quite a sort of go-getter individual, that the stuff to the wayside I don't really prioritize. So maybe my mind is like that, right? When I think about the priorities in my life, like, do I show up to training always? Do I get deadline work done? Do I tick off the things that need to be ticked off? Majority of the time, yes. But are there things I need to improve on? 100%. And they might be the areas of sort of my mental environment that are a bit dirty and skanky and need some consideration. How about you though? Like, what's your mind like, man?
I think it's very like, because I think it's quite cluttered, but I think there's some good cars parked along the drive, but it's very, very cluttered. I go through periods of driving the cars at 70 miles per hour, but then at other times maybe like 40 miles per hour. So I think it's quite rapid. I go through rapid thought displays, rapid chains of thoughts. I think, yeah, would people want to be in my mind? I think people would enjoy it for a little bit.
But what's all this clutter?
Um, Probably the emotion that comes with it.
What are those emotions?
Not feeling like I'm enough.
Mm-hmm.
There's always something lacking. Always something lacking.
And do you think that's because you have ideals for where you want to be and who you want to be, and as Carl Jung said, your ideal becomes a judge, and then you always notice the gap between you and that?
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of the whole thing about thinking in the future a lot. Yeah, you said it like on a podcast a while ago about like how we're both very motivated by unfulfilled potential. Very true. But this whole concept, like, it reminds me of Peterson's idea of like tidy your room. I think it got hated on quite a lot because like people take it as like the basic, but I interpret it as like you have to, one, like your environment is a reflection of you, but it's also like, yeah, tidy your mental room, I guess. And I think his idea behind it as well was like, if you don't have a tidy room, like people want to take on the world, but how can you do that if you haven't got a tidy room first?
That's
Like
the bit that I love. Yeah. Put your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. It's like it's such a brilliant line to whip out if someone's like, like, this is something for me personally. People can disagree, that's fine. But if someone's moaning about, I don't know, some political system or some piece of legislation by the government or some way that their boss is acting or some way that someone else did them wrong or whatever it is, right? That is great and probably valid. But like, is your house in perfect order? Like, how do you feel about yourself? Do you keep to the promises you want to make yourself? And if the answer to those questions are no, like, that's what you need to focus on first. You need to put your house in order, because also the people that we want to change the world are not the people whose houses are all over the place. You want people who have sorted themselves out, refined themselves, and that's why sometimes being selfish in inverted commas and working on yourself is the best thing you can do for the world. So yeah, agreed.
Yeah, you need the foundations before you can build up.
I've got I want to talk about, this reminded me, we talk about how both of us have this idea of like a future self and like this unfulfilled potential. I'm quite proud of myself for this, because I was having a chat with somebody who doesn't believe in God, and I managed to wrangle them to like not agree that God exists, but agree with me, right? So they were going, I don't believe in God because God doesn't exist. And I had to go off the cuff and just like not make up, but like link some things together to make my argument make sense. But I said, okay, well, that depends what you mean by exist, right? Do you mean exist as in we can touch it like this table? Because if so, yes, I agree, God doesn't exist, right? Can't touch him or feel him or any of that. But then I said, do you believe that things can get better in life? And they were like, well, yeah, because things can get better. I was like, okay, well, how is that any different to the religious idea that you'll have an afterlife? It's just been put in a metaphor, right? That you go to this place. But what if this place in heaven is just a symbol for the fact that things can get better if you do good things? But then what brought them round is I said this: do you have an idea of a better version of yourself that you could be? And they go, yes. And I go, do you believe that it's possible you could be that person? And they were like, yes. And I was like, but that person doesn't exist on your personal definition of what exist means, right? You can't touch them or speak to them. So God or Jesus or whoever, the religious character you want to pick from, right? They are just a collective version of people's ideal selves. So mine and your ideal self is our God. It's our idea of what's better and what could be. And that's a great way that I frame it now. And that's how I will explain to people why I believe in God. Because to me, God is just the belief that things can be better. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's like, I might be stretching here and going down the wrong line, but it's like, wasn't it Seneca's idea of euthymia? Is that similar to like being in the state of?
Yeah, that was the idea that true peace in life is found when you know where you're going and you're on the way to get there, rather than being distracted by the multitudes of paths that come across you, right? So that state of euthymia might be like a godlike state, right, where you're moving towards that divine part of you that doesn't exist, right, but you believe in it. Just the same as a Christian will want to be like Christ. But Christ doesn't exist. Christ is just an idea, but it's an idea they can emulate and act out, and that's more useful than whether you believe it or not. Like, it's so much deeper than that. But yeah, that was a bit of a side point, but
I think I think how you start that journey is passion, and I think a lot of people can't find their passion or haven't found their passion or found it too late.
But what does passion mean to you, though? Like, define that term for me in your own words.
Something that you like that is an infinite game
Mm-hmm.
and that helps elevate your identity.
Okay.
And I wondered like um what if you have advice for people to how people can find their passion, because I think we found it quite early, and I think it's something that um just gives us a big purpose in life.
Mm. Well, I'm basically going to regurgitate things that I've learned. So these aren't my ideas. These are just things that I've heard and consumed that have resonated with me, right? But one is, it's not very obvious that you choose what interests you. I think I spoke to you about this before. Interest sort of appears to you like the way you feel hot in a hot room, right? You may have chosen to gone in the room, but you don't choose to sweat, do you? It just happens, right? And in the same way, you don't choose what you admire in the world. When you're walking through a forest, like a flower catches your attention. You don't actively look for a specific flower because you don't know what you're going to come across, right? And I think this is kind of how my interests and my passions arose. It came to me. I didn't look for it. You know, when I was 12, I wanted to be a mathematician, and then I wanted to be an actor. And then psychology and philosophy and the mind just sort of just gradually appeared to me as what I wanted to do. So like, I don't think it's something you can actively look for. I think the best advice you can give for that is to tell people to pay attention. Because no matter what you do, I think there will be a hierarchy of interest in your life. There'll be things that you are interested in and things you're not. Follow the former. If something catches your attention in any way, shape, or form, that could be a feeling, that could be an emotion, pay attention to that and follow it a little bit more. Like when the first few podcasts I listened to, or the first few books I read, or the first few thoughts that I had in these areas, like they felt meaningful to me in a deep way, where it didn't matter whether I ever used them, just the process of learning them and understanding them was fulfilling. So I followed that drive, and it's the drive I still follow. So yeah, hope that makes sense.
I think it's role models is a big part of that.
Yeah.
I think that explains your love for philosophy and psychology.
Mm.
Um,
And yours for business, right? Yeah.
I think you kind of see the life and the person that they are. You aspire to be that.
Mm.
Um, Passion's important. It really is. I think it just keeps people going.
Do you think that's what drives you?
No, right now it did, but the pain drives me a bit more now.
What, the pain of what? The pain of having to give up, or the pain of not being where you want to be and things like that?
So it for me, it's the pain of having to work an average job.
Mm.
It's quite terrifying to me, to be honest. Like just to be in part of an institution, have my freedom limited, and to work for someone else and put money and make money for them. And I think yeah, being broke is a very, very scary idea, I think, for me.
Mm. And why do you think that is?
Because I think initially it's because my parents didn't have money for a while. Um, and I see that they didn't have much freedom. And so it's kind of like a negative role model. Um, yeah, it's just
So it's freedom that you want at the end of the day. It's not really the
yeah,
money.
yeah,
It's more that you don't want someone to be telling you that you need to be in the office at 9 a.m. wearing a suit. You know, it's the creative freedom to be able to make things and do the things you want to do and get paid for it, or just have the ability to do them. Is that right?
yeah, yeah. It's I feel like 'cause someone kind of has a lot of control over you when you're working with someone else.
Yeah.
You you really don't like. There's that psychological thing of them owning you because they kind of do. They
Well, yeah, they own your ability to survive.
they own your time if you're working with someone else, and it's a very nice thing to be in control of your own time.
Yeah.
I people that I know work jobs, most of them hate them. Um, and if you there's the cringy saying if you love what you do, then you don't have to work a day in your life.
Mm.
Yeah, and it's also the biggest thing that forms your identity. Work normally.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I kind of aspire to be a high value man, and then it's like if you break that down, um, the biggest part is kind of what you do.
Yeah.
Like when you think about like the individual characteristics, right? You want to if I think male life is very competition driven. And so how do you compete? Well, you've got right at the bottom. You've got the personality traits. The personality traits of being nice and being funny. They're a must. That like it. Then you've got like being able to think for yourself and having respect, being respected. That's
Mm.
kind of the next layer up, I think. And then the next layer is probably competence. Maybe that's the top layer. So yeah, trying to get as competent as possible to compete.
Yeah. Yeah. I've started rereading David Data's The Way of the Superior Man. It's such a good book. The chapters are so small. You know, it's like a page or maybe even half a page. But there's so much wisdom in every half page of that book that sometimes I have to read the same page 3 times. I like actually try and digest it. And like that is the spiritual Bible for being a man that I would love to give sort of my son to read when he's 16 or something, you know, because it's not just make as much money as possible and have a supercar and like be with loads of women, because that's not truly fulfilling. The way that book talks about purpose and mission, and that actually the highest stage of being a man is being able to give to the world as much as you possibly can, give your unique purpose and creative purpose to the world, and live your life deeply and out of love and search for freedom. Like that to me is, that to me is the high value man. Like that's what it really is. It's not about the supercars and the big house and the jet and all that shit. All that's just the game. And you might like those things, and fair enough, you know, if you want to not deal with the riffraff of a plane trip or whatever, like go for it. But that's not what it's about, really. And they're like the carrots that he'll put at the end of the stick, but that's not really valuable. It's like have you heard Chris Williamson talk about his idea of the value difficulty conflation, where he says,
No.
so he talks about like, look at the car he's driving, look at the watch he's wearing, look at the girl that he's with, right? We perceive these things as valuable because they're difficult to get. right now for us, right? But something can be difficult to get and not be valuable, right? We shouldn't immediately associate difficulty with value. Value requires difficulty, but difficulty doesn't mean value necessarily. And that's a good lesson to learn. So you could grind and grind and grind and get to wherever materially you want to be, but is that stuff just difficult to get rather than being properly valuable to you?
Yeah, I think that's very true. It's kind of the difference as well. Is like they don't necessarily admire you; they admire the symbol that's there, the thing that's there. They want to see themselves in that. They want to see themselves in the car, and also if you do have the material things that people admire, that only gets you really the 5 second conversation of, "Oh, is that your car?"
Mm.
It doesn't. I don't think it goes too further because it's just the act of having, yeah, the thing of having that thing, which people want to see themselves in. Um, is it a My next question was like, is it good to be hard on yourself, and if so, what level?
What do you mean? I sorry, I know I do all the things like, what do you mean this? What do you mean this? But what do you mean by hard on yourself? Like, does that mean the standards you hold for yourself? Does that mean how you talk to yourself? Does that mean what you force yourself to do? And like,
I'd say the standards which kind of come through your inner voice.
I think if you want to live an extraordinary life, you have to hold yourself to extraordinary standards. Because if you don't do that, you don't do extraordinary things. And if you don't do extraordinary things, you don't have an extraordinary life. Right? In terms of, when I hear being hard on yourself, I think like the discipline, grunt work, forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do, that kind of hard on yourself. And for that, I think it comes down to a simple phrase for me, and that is, when it's time to work, work. When it's time to rest, rest. So if being hard on yourself is making yourself work all the time, that's too much. Like, that's where the line is crossed. But if it's, you've got things to do and you do them, and then once they're done, you rest. But when you rest, you're not thinking about the next bit of work, you're resting. That's the good level to be at, I think. So sprinting, recovering. And if that means you've had a difficult or a busy day and you've done the things you need to do, yeah, sit and watch some Netflix. Like, why not, man? We live in an amazing world where if you do things consciously, there's very sick entertainment and possibility that just our ancestors would never have dreamed of. You know, like, obviously if there's a friend that wants to see you, that's probably better in inverted commas than sitting and watching a film. But at the end of the day, these are cool things. Like, so do what needs to be done. But then once you've reached that, then you can ease off on yourself. You know, it's difficult to turn that switch on and off. Like, but I think it isn't a constant on the grind thing, because I think you run out of energy then, and your life's just boring, and you run out of social skills, and you're not friendly to be around because you're just stuck in these horrific discipline routines, you know? So yeah, that's a good answer. There you go.
You're probably quite hard on yourself in basketball, particularly.
We have to be.
Mm.
You know, there's a nice like audio that I've seen on some reels of Mike Tyson having an interview, and this guy's like, why do you get up at 4:30, 5 a.m. and go and run? Like, why do fighters do that? And why do you do that? Why don't you run later in the day? He was like, because I don't want to do it. I know that no one else is doing it. You know, and it's a mentality thing. Yes, they could get up at 9 a.m. and go for a run, but it's that getting up early. And that's what I was sort of saying to friends and stuff. Like, a 6:30 a.m. basketball session isn't optimal. You know, I'm tired by 2 p.m. but like it's a mental thing because I wake up and I do not want to do it. Every time the alarm goes off and I'm like, oh, I could, you know what, I could just turn it off and just go back to bed and lie to everyone. Do you know what I mean? But I would not. And there's a mindset thing. If I know other people aren't doing that, other people wouldn't force themselves to that, and that's it. Different standards, you know. But then yesterday, I had everything I needed to do done by 5:30 p.m. And then from 5:30 till I went to bed at 8 p.m., I did what the hell I wanted. You know, watched some YouTube, scrolled around for a bit, but it was conscious. It was decided. Do you know what I mean?
And what do you think about using work as a coping mechanism?
If you're going to cope, then at least work through it. I mean, like, yeah, I've had that a lot. And I think about that myself too. And I sort of, from people who don't get me, that's one thing that they'll say. It's like, you work to hide, what are you hiding from? You know, so good question. Like, why am I hiding from? Like, but honestly, mate, I genuinely think everyone's coping. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's got demons. Everyone's a little bit traumatized. Everyone doesn't know what the fuck to do here. Do you know what I mean? They've just been randomly found on this earth as a human being with complex psychological hardwire that they can't get rid of. And we're all coping. Do you know what I mean? The cocaine addict is coping. The guy who works 80 hours a week is coping. The girl who likes to go and drink and party and have casual sex is coping. Me getting up at 5:40 a.m. to go and train is coping. We're all coping with the weirdness of being human. It just manifests in loads of different ways. And if you're going to cope, at least do something good for you in the future and everyone else around you, isn't it? Isn't that the better way to be, rather than, like, don't cope by destroying everything. At least if you're going to cope, build something good.
Yeah, I like that because yeah, everyone has darkness and everyone copes a bit differently. There's always, it's like a poison. I remember, like, I just like how Alex Hormozzi talks about, like, working, and that's his coping mechanism, like, because it's like, if you're sad, you can either, like, do something maybe to numb the pain, or you can sit around or be sad, or you can work and be sad. Like, you might as well work and be sad.
Well, I kind of get that, you know. You may as well do something productive for the world. I mean, obviously, like, sometimes you need your mental health day. You know what I mean? Sometimes you need to just relax a bit, but
I think the mental health day is going to the gym.
100%. 100%. Like, I think I do 100% agree. Negative emotional states are only improved really through action. And that action could be going to sleep, okay? Because you'll wake up and you'll feel different, right? But just sitting in it and ruminating isn't really going to help. Like, go and do something. You know? And that's hard. It's hard for it to be a mental bit of work. Like, okay, I'm now going to study. It's like, nah, that's probably not going to work, mate. Your brain's all over the shop. Like, go for a walk in a forest. I genuinely think if you are really anxious and you go for an hour walk in a forest and don't take any electronics with you, you're a different human being after that walk.
Yeah, action advances action. The impediment coming for the next line.
What, the obstacle is the way thing?
Yeah.
It's the impediment. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way.
Yeah. That's another one that's like, it gets, it's one of those quotes, like the niche one, that it really just makes so much sense when you hear it. It just hits something down below.
Yeah, deep in your core.
Yeah, it's like,
that Nietzsche quote is what my next video is about. I told you that, didn't I? I'll give you a little bit of the... Go on.
He also has another one that I think's like one of his best as well. It's like, it's something about like life is suffering, and then he's like, you need to find meaning in the suffering.
Mm.
I'll try and get the exact one up.
Yeah. Yeah. So 100%. Like that's what my next video is about. His main quote that people think about, which is, "He who has a why to live can bear any how." I'm trying to figure out why that makes so much sense intrinsically, because I actually did something different with this video. I didn't really have a video idea that I'd made a note of like a week before that I was going to expand on. So I literally just had on my calendar like video, like idea creation. So what does that look like? And then I actually asked myself a question and framed it in an interesting way that I might do for future videos. Well, I just said, I'll find actually, because it's in this notepad. I wrote to myself, if I was going to do a talk to an audience tonight, what question would I want to try and answer? And I sat with that question for a while. Like if I had 100 people in a room and I had to go up on stage and do a talk, what would I talk about? And then I've literally just written the quote, "He who has a why to live can bear any how, but why is this true?" And that's what the whole video is about. So that's a good frame for me to like sort of come up with ideas. But basically, this is what I've come to so far, and I'll elaborate more on it when you see the video. But the reason having a why means you can bear any how is because having a why gives your life an important context, right? So what I mean by that is, in life, to get good things, good outcomes, you need to do hard things, okay? And hard things are the how. That's the thing you've got to endure. That's the difficulty, okay? But without a context of why you're doing the hard things, okay, if you look at hard things in isolation, it's like, why are you doing that? Why are you putting yourself through hours of difficulty? Why are you putting your body and mind in a state of stress? Why would you do that if there's no context? It just seems stupid, okay? But when you put the difficult things, the how, in the context, the broader context of why you're doing that thing, then it seems worth it. So like, exercise is a prime example, but if you look at the physiological state that exercise puts you in, why would you just do that voluntarily? It doesn't make sense on its own. Like, why would you raise your heart rate, increase your blood pressure, damage your muscle tissue? Why? Like, what's the point? But when you put it in the wider context of it improves your health, then it makes sense, and it's worth enduring that how, that difficulty. And I talk about how actually a lot of the time our brain understands the world in context. Okay, we don't see isolated objects and events. And actually, I bring up some data that we looked at in a cognition lecture about how language works. And people, like, it makes sense subjectively if you think about it. People recognize words so much easier, like the meanings of words, so much easier when they're in the context of a sentence, don't they? Right? Because two words can mean two different things. The same word can mean multiple different things if it's not put in a context. So the word bank, well, that can be the place you go to exchange money. It can be the place you go to fish, or it can be where you aim to shoot the basketball. Right? All of those things are true, but without being in the context of a sentence, you don't know how to interpret it, right? And also, just going out in the world, you don't see often individual leaves, do you? You see a tree. You see that leaf in its context, in its broader context of why it's there. Or when you look at a car, you don't see the wheels, the engine, the suspension, the gearbox, the seats, the frame, all that shit. You don't see that. You see a car. You see the whole context of all these composite parts put together. So your life is the same way. Like, waking up each morning and making the sacrifices, doing the work in isolation seems kind of pointless. You're like, well, why would I spend my time doing hard things? But then when you realize the overall context of why you're doing it, that means you can endure anyhow. So that's sort of my take on that Nietzsche quote.
And that's kind of why you should treat your life like a work of art, because everything put together makes for the context of you.
100%. Like, think about a painting. Imagine if you just looked at 1 square millimeter of a painting. It'd be pointless. It'd just be like a little speck of color. When you zoom out and look at the whole image, the whole piece, in its whole context, that's when the beauty manifests itself.
Yeah, it's like there's context in everything.
Mm.
Um, World's made of context.
Yeah,
There's a bigger picture.
100%, always. Yeah. The world isn't a place of isolated objects. It's not. The world is a stage. Like, so right. It's such a, like, that's another one. Shit, like that Shakespeare quote. The world is a stage where a performance goes on with characters and context and props and themes and scenes and plot lines. It is. It's not. The world isn't a physical place, Jacob. It's really not.
But after you die, is there a need to oversee that piece of art or that film of your life? Is there a, should there be um should you should it be there to see, or is it kind of just like you owned that place and time? Your picture is there for that moment of time.
Well, whether we get to look back on our lives as a whole when we die anyway, we're either burdened or blessed with the fact that we're always looking back at our lives now, because who we are and where we are is all just a combination of decisions we've made. And memories can pay dividends, like good memories and good self-esteem pays dividends for the long term, right? So you're going to suffer with how your painting looks, whether you die or not, right? It's that same, like, that's what Oscar Wilde expanded on the picture of Dorian Gray. It's like the message of that book of this guy acting morally. People didn't notice, but he knew because there was this painting in this attic that was slowly degrading every time he did an immoral thing. Like, that's your conscience, and everyone has one of those unless you're a psychopath. We all have this painting of who we are in our minds, and it's not always obvious to us, right? You might not know it consciously, you might not be able to articulate it, but it's 100% there.
But do you reckon, like, when we're 90 and looking back, we think, oh, do you think when we're 90 we're enjoying looking back at our life? Or do you think that it'd be a bug us that, like, oh, I knew I could have done this different. I knew I could have made this better.
Well, those, like, critical thoughts may come, but I don't think there's much point to them because you can't change it, right? And knowing me and you, we're going to do remarkable things. Whether they'll be completely perfect and how we would do them if we did them again, no, they're not. I mean, think about just how I think about it personally, right? Secondary school was great. Wasn't perfect. There were so many things I'd do differently. I wouldn't say that thing to that girl. I wouldn't have acted that way in front of that teacher. Right? There were going to be things I would change. But when I look back on the overall experience, it was great. And I can't do it again. I can't go back there. So I think our whole life will be similar.
I think it's you make your mistakes never make you.
Yeah, they only define you if you let them.
So you shouldn't let them define you. Yeah. And so, yeah, well, when you reach that, like, age of 90, I reckon you would just look back. There wouldn't really be much point in kind of looking on. That's all you have to do is look back.
That's a weird thing, you know. Like, imagine it, because we've got no idea what it's like being 90 and being like, I'm going to die in the next 10 years. Like, I know that. Like, now, yeah, me and you could die, but the probability is very low. When you get to that age, it's like, there's probably a 95% chance I die in the next 5 years. That's got to be a weird psychological state. I know you've been around for a while, but
Yeah, it would be weird. I think you'd have to, like, there's kind of a communication with death, I reckon.
yeah.
You feel the Grim Reaper coming, and you have to
Say hi.
you have to think you would think about death a lot, I think, when you get very close to it.
I mean, do you ever think about death?
It's weird. No, No, not really. I just think I'm like the main character, and I'm just like on a certain level, and it's the whole campaign to go.
Yeah. When I thought about it when my granddad died last year, and it was actually when I was here at uni, so it was a few months later, and I was sort of lying in bed, staring at my ceiling in the dark. And I was like, imagine if I closed my eyes and they never opened again. And that's what he's just experienced. Imagine if you close your eyes, never open again. Oh shit, like that's a call to gratitude. Because they will open tomorrow morning. So that, you know that song you showed me a few months ago, Found Some Regret, with That Is the Weekend and like Jim Carrey on it? Some of the lyrics in that are unreal. And it's sort of that same thing, like, you know, when he asks, was it a dissonant chord you were strumming? It's like, how does your life sound? Because now it's over, you can't go back now. But yeah.
Yeah, I know you don't like The Weeknd, but I do recommend that album because the whole concept is about the afterlife and like the transition into it. Um, yeah. I suppose if your eyes closed, like you wouldn't. I don't think it'd make you worry too much. I don't because you wouldn't really know that your eyes are closed. Well, you wouldn't know.
What do you mean?
Like, so if you went to bed and your eyes were never to open again, you'd just be you'd be okay just in the darkness.
I'm not talking like my eyes are open. I'm talking you die.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
I know.
Okay. Well, that's something I was saying to Boris actually, because he was asking me like, do you believe in reincarnation? Do you think there's something after death? And I was like, well, I'd like to think this isn't the end, and that the Joel Clifton experience is just something temporary. But I said, even if it's not the case, I won't know because I'll be dead, so it's fine. Like I may as well believe and have that hope and live my life as if that's the case. And if it's not, I'll be dead anyway, and I won't know. So it's fine. No one loses.
So do you think it's quite an important thing to consider? Like, would your 80-year-old self be proud of what you're doing now?
Yeah, probably. But then also you've got to go and make fuck ups and mistakes. Like, and I also think a lot of them aren't avoidable. Like I feel like whatever you do, you're young and you're stupid. You're gonna mess shit up. You're gonna hurt people. You're gonna do wrong things. Like that builds who you are at the end of the day. You aren't just your good side. You're everything put together. So, but yeah, it's nice to think about what Joel. I think more about Joel at 35 maybe. He's a bit closer and a bit more realistic. At 80, I just want to be getting high all the time and talking to my grandkids. Really. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. The full is the precursor to a savior.
That's it.
The full.
Oh, 100%, mate. We are fucking stupid. We're too.
I think the savior.
Yeah. And then the old like magic like shaman bloke is just me when I'm old, mate. When I'm in my 60s, I'm just gonna be like meditating and taking mushrooms, and just like preaching to people about life. That's literally my goal. I'm gonna be sat in a lotus position, just off my fucking rocker all day. Like that's the goal. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to do properly. Like, try and know your spirits a bit more.
What do you mean, like which archetype you're acting out in your life for?
Well, if you're like if why would you spend that time like doing mushrooms when you're 60? What's the benefit of that? Like knowing yourself and knowing your place maybe in the spirit world.
It's gonna be vibes, mate. I mean, I'm gonna have everything done that I've wanted to do. Had a great career, brought up some great kids. You know, I have the resources for it. Like, why not just chill out, explore myself, listen to reggae, and like just invite my friends over that I've met in the past 60 years. I'll just call them out of the blue and be like, come to my chalet and we'll have an open fire and I'll cook you a soup and we'll discuss your problems. Like that'll be me, mate. I'll be some guy with a massive beard somewhere rural. And I'll just be like, let's take some psilocybin and talk through some things. You know?
Yeah, and that's kind of the goal.
100%, mate.
The reason why it's not good to work.
No.
And there's still retirement age can be like 70. So
it's dark, isn't it? It's dark. But the good thing is, like, can't be having that. The good thing is, like, we've got so much time. Like, it's fine. Like, we could take 10 years to figure this out. Like, it's cool. You know?
yeah. I mean, it's quite a hard thing to do. Like, do the same thing for 10 years. Like, because it does take a decade to like kind of achieve mastery. But if you do the same thing for 10 years, yeah, you achieve the enough amount of success. You achieve enough of success. So you've just got to be okay with what you're doing every day for 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's why chapter 1 of The Way of Superior Man says, don't wait for anything to be different in your life. Because if you hate what you're doing now, you're not going to be able to do it for the long term, and you're not going to get any kind of success or good outcomes from it. You've got to be able to just do the work consistently for a while. You know?
Yeah. Work ethics. Wow. I think it's nice that we've kind of picked our things, or like roughly our areas. We've built up the skills. I know Alan Watson's like, there's no pleasure without skill. And that we are learning and have learned the skills.
Did you see the angry comment on my YouTube video about Alan Watts?
No.
Oh mate, I'll show it to you. It's quite funny. The person has a good point, but I'm just like, bro, why are you commenting on my video like this? Do you know what I mean? I'll show you. I think it was the ego video. Yeah, here. Like multiple paragraphs. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, hold on. So they basically say that most of his views were just refragments of Eastern philosophy adapted to a Western crowd and ultimately had no substance to it. He only managed to pull it off due to his skills in creating coherent narratives that fed into the Western cultural need for answers in a post-Nietzsche world. What do you mean by that? I mean, he just say his teachings of escapism and paint a picture of a utopian world, yada yada yada. In regards to your title, we aren't who we think we are because thought is an illusion and the mind is limited. It doesn't have the capacity to understand the whole. It's partial, and therefore any attempt we make to find ourselves is always partial. So, yeah, I didn't reply because I was like, well, what do I reply to that? Because that's fair enough. But yeah, interesting. But that comes back to that same lesson, right? That like even your gurus are flawed. You know, should never put anyone on a pedestal because everyone's, as much as you admire them, there's still shit going on in their life. Like Chris Williamson probably doesn't call his parents as much as he should. You know,
Why The Rock?
The Rock has his issues, man. I don't think like The Rock. Does The Rock ever see his kids? And if he does, is it always filmed?
That's a good question.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like, I wouldn't want my dad to be The Rock. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. What is your favorite emotion?
Is peace of mind an emotion?
Patience, probably.
Peace. Yeah.
You're more serotonin than dopamine. I'm the same.
Um. Yeah, because that state you can be in for a prolonged period of time and it's still good. That's sort of like, I've just had a coffee, let's get in the car and drive down the motorway to a basketball game. That's also a good state. That's that excitement, right? But I wouldn't want to be in that state all of the time. Do you know what I mean? I'd never sleep, never relax.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's probably the goal, isn't it? To be in the serotonin like as much as possible. I quite like confidence. Is that an emotion?
Yeah, this is it. This is where we get into our semantics again. Like, what's an emotion? Like, or is confidence a mental state? Is it a state of thought? And is peace of mind a mental state rather than an emotion? Do you feel confidence in your body?
No, I just feel kind of strength.
There you go. So is that an emotion? I don't know. Because there are six basic emotions. Like emotions, if we look at this scientific definition, have to have something physiological to them. So like the six basic emotions, if I can get this off the top of my head, are sadness, happiness, surprise, fear, anger, disgust. And they're the ones that you can see in people's faces. Do you know what I mean? Even unconsciously, even though they don't know they're feeling a certain way, you can tell by the way that their eyebrows are contracted or their cheek muscles are oriented or the way their body is or things like that.
Maybe like some of the emotions are like a combination of two of them to make it one.
Like the color wheel.
But it's like, say, what was it? What's in between fear and sadness?
Anxiety.
Anxiety. Yeah. Yeah, and guilt's my least favorite.
Mm. Yeah, that's kind of deep. Why? What are you guilty about, Jacob?
I'm not guilty about anything, but when I have been in the past, I didn't like it.
Yeah, I feel that.
It just makes a physical pain.
Yeah, because
Isn't love?
especially if you're guilty about something you've done for other people, but that's dark. You know you've actively made someone's life worse when you didn't need to.
Yeah, it's kind of lying. It's something that like attaches itself onto you.
Mm. What are you thinking about? I feel like a question was coming, but now you're just staring at the wall.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to remember my question, and I had a second.
All right.
Yeah. Do you have any questions? I don't. Yeah.
Not really, man. I mean, I wanted to mention that bit about the next video, and I wanted to mention that idea about God being your future self. Yeah. We have done like just under an hour as well, to be fair.
Like, are emotions like states of mind then?
No, not clinically. An emotion is your body's reaction to a stimulus. Like, it's a physiological thing more than a mental thing. Like, I would say peace of mind is not an emotion, it's a mental state. Because, yeah, I don't know, an emotion is physiological, not just psychological. So I don't think you can physiologically feel regret. It's just a thought that you have. Oh, I wish I'd done that. But like, I don't think you can physiologically feel burnt out. Well, actually, no, maybe you can. That's a lie. That's a bad example. I don't think you can physiologically feel um like irritated by someone. I mean, like your stomach, your heart rate doesn't increase. Then maybe if it gets into anger, it does. But yeah, emotions are quite basic and quite primal.
I feel like emotions on the extreme, it makes you feel something, maybe warm or something inside
Yeah,
in your body.
yeah,
So that's the body part of it.
yeah.
And did you say love's one of the main emotions?
No, it's not one of the 6 basic emotions that were outlined back in like the 1950s. They were happiness, surprise, fear, anger, disgust, and sadness.
It must just be a form of happiness then, love.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's people's kind of favorite emotion, really.
Yeah.
Pals.
It's a good point, actually. Why is it not in the 6 basic emotions? Because I would say that is a physiological thing. You know, you feel it in your heart, also in your sex organs. Do you know what I mean? In your, it's a very visceral emotion. But is love an act, or is it just a feeling? You know, is love something you respond to, or is it something that compels you?
I think it's kind of like the love versus loyalty argument. Like, loyalty is an act, whereas love's an emotion. Love's just kind of a feeling, and then you act on it, already based on loyalty.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice way of framing it.
I think loyalty and love go quite close together. The loyalty maintains the love.
Yeah. But do you think you've ever actually been in love? Like,
only once.
like in a school relationship or something?
My first kiss, like, that was like the most love I've felt. It was like my first like long kiss, and it was like a really nice feeling inside. Like, the best. You could just feel it inside so much, like heavenly, like I've just smoked a load of weed. Like so warm inside. From a kiss. It's kind of like high up love.
Yeah. You know, I would say my first kiss experience was similar. You know, like just this weird primal excitement.
But I feel like that's kind of the surprise element in it as well.
Yeah, you weren't expecting it. Yeah.
And it's like, this is the first time. The surprise is a feeling inside.
Yeah.
Like, when you get, that's the bubble.
I was like, oh fuck, it's happening to me finally. Like, damn. Like, and then like, I left her house and got back in the car with mum, and I just like was filled with this just like energy. I could have fucking bench pressed like 1,000 kilos at that point. And I like wanted to tell mum what happened, but then I was also a bit embarrassed, so I didn't. Like, do you know what I mean? But in my head, I'm like, Joel, you're the fucking man. So odd, that, innit?
Yeah, that'd be a great idea. That'd be a great experiment. Joel, you should do, when you do like your psychology experiment when you're like your last year, you should try and get a load of people who haven't had a kiss before and get with and let them kiss some really nice looking woman and see how much they bench press compared to the rep where they haven't had that kiss.
You say, what I'll do is day one, I'll bring them in and get them to sort of, bench press their max, right? And a week later, I'll just like pay some like OnlyFans model to like just come in, give them a lap dance and a snog. And then they go and bench press again. Like a minute after that.
Yeah, feel like the man. I reckon it would be like,
however, you've got to think about the methodology of it and be like, well, is it artificial and not actually valid to apply to life if like you're involved in an experiment and then some fit girl comes along and gives you a lap dance and a kiss? Is that as real And will that have the most real effect is like a real life scenario when you're like 13, 14 or whatever with your first girlfriend? Like, I think they're very different experiences.
What's that word begin with like P? That's like uh to remove like a bias or something like a P. Um,
To remove
well, I like one. Well, no. When one branch of the study has like doesn't know something, um,
what? Oh, what do you mean? Placebo.
placebo. Yeah,
Yeah.
you need to add some sort of placebo. I reckon.
Yeah. Then it's tough because you can get participants that do have a girlfriend, but then that wouldn't be their first kiss. So it'd be also like they've been habituated to that scenario. But there's a lot of factors here.
Mm. I mean, Finn did like studies that are basically like that, so I reckon you could probably pull it off.
Yeah, I'll definitely do something sort of performance based in inverted commas. Like, how does this affect someone's performance on a basketball court or in training or whatever, or cognitively, something like that.
Mm.
Yeah, it's interesting. What you call it there?
Yeah,
That was interesting. I mean, I'm a bit tired, but generally we got some points out there.
yeah. Well, I'm quite hungry as well.
Hungry? Have you had dinner?
Yeah, no, I haven't yet.
Shit, what's on the menu for? Is it going to be like loads of raw carrot on top of some cooking pasta? Mate, honestly, that story made me laugh so much. It was the way it progressed.
Oh, mate, it's got like 60K on TikTok or something.
No,
Everyone's commenting. Yeah,
oh my God.
if you go on TikTok right now and search Lucina,
How am I spelling that?
so Lucy NA, you should see some girl, and then if you click on it, it should be the first one.
Some girl. It's an anime girl.
Do you want me to send it to you actually? That'd be
Yeah, yeah.
easier. And we got a couple followers from it as well because you tagged the If Minded podcast.
Shall I stop recording on Zoom, by the way?
Yeah, thank you everyone for listening. We'll be back next week as normal. And yeah, if you share this podcast, if you're enjoying it, if you don't mind sharing it to a friend, that's the main way that podcasts tend to grow. So if you want to do us that a favor, then we'd appreciate it. If not, we'll see you next week.
There you go.